Hi, everybody. Welcome to All Things Metaphysical podcast with Kellie and Gail. This is episode 51.
Wow.
Yeah. And today we thought almost a year.
Yep.
Almost, well, we've done it a little over a year, but we have 51 episodes.
Yeah.
Today we thought we'd talk about self care with intuitives and energy workers.
Yeah. It's a big thing because often we're so focused on other people's needs and healing everybody around us that we kind of don't take care of ourselves. And then we get really tired, and that's how we get sick. So, yeah, it's a
Well,
big,
a lot of times people who are intuitive are also caretakers
mhm.
and empaths.
Yeah,
And so you feel what's going on with everyone else. And sometimes you then have a tendency to put everyone else's needs in front of your own because you can feel what's going on with everyone else and you're trying to make it okay for other people.
right, right. So what do? Usually I wait until it's already too late, until I should have backed off, and paid attention to myself, a month or so ago. When I hit a wall, I hit a wall. I'm
Mhm.
just no good to anybody at that point, including myself. So what do you do when you reach that point where you realize you need to take a step back and take care of yourself?
Well, you know, it's funny because I had this experience come up at work and they're like, just go to the office and take care of this. And I'm like, I can't go to the office. And they're like, well, what is the big deal about going to the office? You used to work in the office every day. Why can't you go back there? And I'm thinking about because I'm struggling with some, health stuff right now myself. And I'm like, and so because I wouldn't go to the office, I then ended up having to get a new printer, but that's a whole separate story. But I protected myself because I was already in this like lowered state. And my boss kept saying, just go to the office and get it taken care of. And I'm like, at this point, I don't care how much ink and paper I have to buy. I'm doing it from home and I'll pay to send it out. I am not going to the office
Right.
because just being like the thought of going into that energy. I mean, like I literally, when she said I was going to have to go to the office, I had a panic attack.
Yeah.
And it's not because I can't manage myself or I can't handle myself, but I know what energy is there. And because I'm in, struggling with my own health right now, that would have just been way too much for me and really set me back. And my boss just didn't understand. I said, does it matter to you how I take care of it as long as I take care of it? She's like, no, not really. I'm like, okay, then I'm going to just do it from home and then I'll take it to the post office myself
Yeah.
and send it out.
And see, that's having boundaries. And you've learned where your boundaries are. I
Mhm.
know a lot of people who are new to this journey who are still trying to figure that out. And it's really telling
Mhm.
when all of a sudden you're like, everything inside of you is going, nope, not going to happen. And we have to learn to listen to that
Mhm.
because that really is your higher self saying, rethink this thought.
Mhm.
Don't put yourself in harm's way. Don't set yourself up to have an anxiety issue, or trigger depression. I know so many people right now are struggling with everything. I've talked to several clients bug lately, and everyone has the same thing.
Mhm.
Why am I so tired? Why do I feel like I'm not sleeping? Why is everything bothering me? Why are there just some places I can't go? Why are there just some people I can't talk to anymore? Well, that's all things that you need to learn for yourself where your boundaries are, especially when it's people.
Mhm.
If you've got someone in your life, and I have a really good friend who's going through this right now, you have someone in your life that is constantly making you sick. I mean, not like you're literally sick, but you feel sick, you feel off. And every single time in the last couple of weeks when she has run into this person, she's called me later going, I have such a headache. I don't know why I'm so tired. I don't know why is this happening. And it's when you're waking up,
Mhm.
you become more sensitive. And
Mhm.
there were many of us who that was really difficult to understand. Wait a minute, I'm going to be more sensitive.
Don't
Um,
don't get me wrong, it was still pretty difficult for me this time
yeah.
because my boss kept pushing me to do it, and I'm just like, finally, I said to her, "As long as I get it done, what difference does it make?" Yeah, it would have cost me less than ink and paper. The
Right.
postage itself wasn't bad, but, I'm just like, this way I can do it at my own pace. I have my own space because whenever I go to the office, there's no space for me. I just have to sit out in the open, like on a couch. And I'm like, there's everything all around. And I'm just like, right now, I know that I can't tolerate that.
Right.
So,
Right. And that's okay. And that's, I think, one thing that people seem to not get. That's okay.
mhm.
It's perfectly fine for you to say, you know what, that's not all right for me, or I don't want to do that. And so many times, people get talked into things that they really should stand their ground and say, no, I'm not going to do that.
I've
So,
gotten talked into lots of different
yeah,
things,
I
and
too.
I was kinda surprised because there are times where I like to go to the office and I like to see everyone, but energetically, I have to be in a better space because I know what I'm gonna need to do to protect myself to even walk in there,
Yeah.
and I just didn't have that energy to do that, so, you know, I
Yeah.
think it's about honoring that, like, if you're really tired and it's also really difficult to make decisions when you're tired or you're not feeling well or you're under a lot of stress. And I just wanna say welcome to our viewers. If you guys have any questions, please feel free to put them in the comments section. Um, and if you're watching, please subscribe and like our channel and share it with other people.
Please.
Um, so again, I think it's about part of the journey of being on the metaphysical path isn't just learning all the cool stuff. I mean, that is a piece of it, like talking to the other side or feeling energy or things like that. But it's also how does it affect you? And how do you manage when you get upgrades and things like that? Because it throws your world all, I just like saying this word, cattywampus.
Yeah. Yes. Yes, it does. It's really tough sometimes. When
Mhm.
I teach people who are brand new to everything, really, I seem to attract those. Um, Before the first thing everybody wants to do is talk to dead people. Everybody wants to do this. And you have to back them up, slow down a little bit. First, you need to know how to protect yourself.
Mhm.
First, you need to know, how do you know what you're feeling is yours or somebody else's?
Mhm.
And all of these things, I have all of these different steps that people go through. And they don't understand it. They're just like, no, I want to go from 0 to 157, and there are steps to do this properly. You can get there immediately, but you don't know what you're opening yourself up for.
Mhm.
And it's people always laugh when I talk about this stuff, but there are some really dark entities,
Mhm.
and they really, really like when new people who don't know what they're doing pick up a Ouija board. I mean, there is a celebration, in on the dark side where they're like, "We'll get them now," and that really does have a high likelihood of happening. I've seen it happen too many times to just blow it off, but you have to learn how to protect yourself. You don't automatically know that.
One of the other things that I'm going to talk about, because this is how it always affects me, whenever I'm leveling up or going to the next level, physically, my body can't always handle it. And I start to have a lot of like medical issues that otherwise I'm pretty, and you've known me for a long time. I'm usually
Yeah,
pretty even keel
yeah.
and I'm really good at um, keeping myself that way. So it's been really interesting to me this last month in particular how much I've been affected. And I'm like, how much are you leveling me up?
Right, right.
There really is something to the term ascension sickness and things like that.
Yeah, I was just going to say that because people blow that off. Oh, no, no, there's not. Yes, there is. It is very real. It is very, very real. And it's always surprising to me how many people between intro Reiki and Reiki master level,
Mhm.
you've got a lot of energy that people are coming to terms with. And it is amazing to me how many students will come in that last part of level 2 and they're going, what is wrong with me? I have a headache. I'm tired. I can't do anything. I can't think straight. And I'm like, it's working. You know, and they look at me like I've done something terrible to them. But you just have to learn how to move through it. You know, drink a lot of extra water.
Mhm.
You know, be careful what kind of people, what kind of situations you expose yourself to. Because at that time, you're very vulnerable. You're still integrating new stuff. And you can, here's my favorite word, you can become discombobulated because um, it hasn't settled yet. And I always tell people, during that time, it's best if you eat very light.
Mhm.
Try to avoid meat. Drink tea, drink water, avoid anything carbonated or alcoholic. It will make it worse. And they always look at me like, but a couple of beers makes me relax. Not in this case. This is very, very different than what you're used to. So,
Yeah, the energy has been very strange the last August was a very strange. I mean, I go through a lot with my family of origin stuff in August anyway, and then it was really strange on top of that.
yeah,
I think, like, especially in the United States, if you're watching any news lately, I mean, you can't, and you're somewhat empathic, you can't help but pick things up, or people talking about things, you can't help but pick things up. So again, it's that protecting yourself. That the other thing we, besides protecting yourself, is you have to remember to cleanse yourself.
yeah,
And my favorite way of doing that is, in the shower and the bath is great, but if you can't take a shower or bath in the present moment and you're feeling like you've been slimed, imagine yourself standing under a violet colored waterfall where you can control the speed of the water. And then the violet water cleanses and washes everything away and recycles it.
yeah.
I came up with that years and years ago because it was very helpful to me.
You can also sage yourself. One thing that's really simple is just to shake yourself like you're shaking things off of you. Wipe down your shoulders, your arms, your legs, and mentally ask your angels, or out loud if you can, ask your angels, please help me get all of this ick off. And yes, that is the professional term. It's the ick that
Now,
you're, that you're removing.
the other piece of that I want to cover too is as you start to kind of, I use the term leveling up because I think it's funny. But as you start to learn more and feel more and see more, and now I'm thinking of Little Shop of Horrors, see more. Sorry, I distracted myself there for a minute. My spirit team is on a roll right now. Is that you also have to remember you're going to start hearing more and getting more nudges and more pushes to go in different directions, and finding ways to honor that is really important too.
Yeah. Do what resonates to you. Someone asked me earlier today about using crystals. She actually attaches crystals inside her sponges when she takes showers. And she says, why do I do that? Well, if it calls to you, you should do it. That's,
Probably because she's an Atlantean.
yeah. And, there aren't any hard and fast rules.
Mhm.
Do what calls to you, do what resonates with you. When I tell people about the violet flame and the shower of violet light the first time, they look at me like I've turned purple or myself. But then after working with it, every one of them comes back, that's very effective. So it's really what calls to you.
Mhm.
If you hear us say something and you're immediately repulsed by it, reach out to us and we can get to the heart of why that is,
Mhm.
because that shouldn't happen.
Yeah, skincare, everything is really important.
Yeah,
We only have one physical body while we're down here on the third rock from the sun. And my favorite way of thinking about Earth is that this is actually school, and that, how do we know that Earth really isn't hell? Where we go? I mean, that's a whole different discussion, but
Yeah.
sometimes it feels that way, like,
Yes, it does.
you take the tests and then learn the lessons.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That show, The Good Place, just popped into my head. It's, the whole time they were thinking it was the good place, turns out it was actually hell. But, there's so many people lately who have had such a horrible time on this planet.
Mhm.
There's just, mass chaos everywhere and a lot of darkness. And I've heard people say, well, why bother?
Mhm.
Why take care of myself? I just want to go home. I'm just going to check out. And that always concerns me when I hear people talk like that, because you never know what
Mhm.
someone is thinking.
Mhm.
Um, and when you are on this particular path, if you think the rest of humanity has it hard, just wait, because our pathway is much harder.
Mhm.
Our lessons are much, much harder. At
Mhm.
least in my life, they've been much, much harder. And people say, well, why go down that path then? Because while the lows are lower, certainly, the highs are a lot higher.
Mhm.
And we're put here to help humanity level up, to help people learn their lessons, to help people move forward. And the more of us that are on this path, the easier it's going to be for all of us. So please, please,
I don't remember if it was last week or the week before, because they all kind of blur
yeah,
together, but we were talking about soul families and why there's so much language about finding your soul tribe and finding that sense of connection, because we travel in soul groups, and when you meet somebody from your soul group, they feel like it's your tribe because
right,
you have that instant connection with them. You feel like you've known them forever because you probably have,
yeah, literally, yes,
for
yeah,
eons and eons. Yeah.
yeah. I have actually met people in the last probably 5, 6 years that have approached me with, there you are. I've been looking for you everywhere. And they're serious. They're completely serious. And it's interesting because my life, a lot of people on this path have always been kind of loners and, the outcast. But in my life, I've only had, one or two friends at whatever time, and they never last for
Mhm.
more than a year or two. That's been my pattern since my first
So
book came out.
how do I fit into that? Because it's been more than a year or 2.
I know, but since I wrote my book, my first book came out, and I started coming out of hiding. I hid for a very long time. And when I stepped out from the shadows, all of a sudden there's all these people. And it's like the same people that I had that instant connection with, like you, like many of our mutual friends. Um, they're still here. And it's like every time I talk to someone, I'm like, whoa, what just happened? Because it's very different. Your soul tribe, your soul family is very, very different feeling than
Mhm.
someone that you were friends with in college or whatever it was. So
Mhm.
that's something kind of to look forward to, I think.
So, viewers, let us know if you have any questions tonight. Just put them in the comments section. We will address them. You know, yeah, I think one of the things too is you move down the path, the metaphysical path, you are much better about spending time with yourself. I
Yeah.
used to have a hard time being by myself, but now I actually prefer it.
Yeah. 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 I do too. I've never really been alone though, because I've always been able to see spirit and
Mhm.
other beings wherever they're from. So I was never alone. I
Mhm.
often got teased by my family because they would hear me talking to these beings and come into the room and I was by myself. Yep, that's just me. I'm a nut job. I'm talking to myself because that was easier for me than to tell them, you don't see these people? Really? You don't see them? Because to me, they were like people or like whatever entity they showed up as.
Yeah, it's just so
But it's very different with your soul tribe.
Mhm. So yeah, I've been thinking about that. I've also just, I don't know, I guess as fall hits, because now, we just passed Labor Day in the States. I think about, the end of the year coming up and unfortunately the crazy election cycle that we have going on here right now. But I just think that, you know, I look at everything that's going on and you can tell the people who are awake and you can tell the people who are still sleeping in this election cycle. And so for me, it's been really interesting to kind of watch from like that perspective. It's really interesting to see who else is awake and who is still sleeping in dual matrix energy.
I don't watch news anymore. I haven't in years. I went from being an absolutely news junkie to I don't watch it.
And I went the other way. I've
Right.
never watched news in my entire life, and for some reason, and we've talked about this, for
Yeah.
some reason, I think light workers are watching news because as we watch it, we're helping shift things.
Right.
And I
And
know it's not just me, there's bunches of us.
there are a lot. Yeah, there are a lot. And my thing as I grew stronger in my abilities, I can tell you what the news is about by feeling the neighbor,
Mhm,
because it's that strong for me. If
mhm,
I watch it, it makes me physically ill. And so I had to stop years ago. I had to stop because it was just too much for me. And every night I send healing where it's needed.
mhm.
No, I'm not going to talk about that.
Now I wanna know what you're not gonna talk about.
I certain somebody on the political stage.
Oh,
But that's what I can do.
mhm.
I can't be a part of it anymore. I can't.
Well, and I mean, I think the thing that I found the most interesting, like I said, my parents used to watch news around the clock, and I always thought they were bananas. And how do you do that? And I'm like, so in the last few weeks, it's been really interesting to me. But I think I'm looking at it from like an energetic perspective,
Right.
and like more, and trying to just figure out how some people can believe some things and how other people
Yeah.
don't believe that. And so I guess for me, and I guess that's part the therapist part of me, is I look for the disconnects.
They're abundant. Yeah.
Mhm,
I used to be one of those people that would organize protest marches.
mhm.
Um I
Of
my
course, what haven't you actually done?
but my daughter was talking to someone the other day, and this is nothing to do with anything, but they accused her of being anti-gay because she didn't go to this one march. And she was like, "Come here a minute. We got to look at photo albums together." And there is my 2-year-old daughter at a march, and there is my 4-year-old daughter at a march, and she grew up in that.
Mhm,
Um, and that's who I was. I was just fight for the people with no voice, or the animals with no voice, or anybody who was being, not being dealt with fairly. And that got to a point where I can't. I just stopped everything. I had to. It was just making me sick,
mhm.
physically ill. Put
I
me in
have
the
noticed
hospital.
that I haven't watched as much news in the last few days, and I feel better. So, I mean, I think I'll just kind of go through this ebb and flow pattern with it,
Yeah. I
because
get I get the reasoning behind watching it so you know where to send
mhm,
energy and healing. I get that. But there are people who can't even do that.
mhm,
And it's like, nope.
yeah.
But someone said news is like comedy now. It kind of is, I think, but still it's sad it hurts my heart because we had gone so far forward and then all of a sudden we're shoved way, way, way back.
And maybe this is just one of those points, that's a wake-up call again, because apparently we haven't learned what we were supposed to learn due to the COVID virus, so now we're still getting lessons as to
Yep.
where we want to go as as a society, and what we want to stand for and what we want to believe.
Someone said not a fan of large crowds. I was never either,
Mm.
but it was something about me trying to right the wrongs of the world. For a long time, I was convinced that my whole purpose in life was to fight for the underdog.
Mhm.
And I got past that. But
The thing about large crowds is, one, energetically, it's really difficult for me. And
yeah,
sometimes when you come across somebody who's really negative in a large crowd, because there are people who carry, I'm not going to say are dark, but carry darkness with them.
right.
And when I run into those people in large crowds, it's very difficult for me.
Yeah. Yeah. And that was the thing that I always was amused by. When you do any kind of a march,
Mhm,
you see the little groups
mhm,
forming inside the march. And so I would always align myself with the people who felt good,
mhm.
and as we would go on whatever march it was, you would see the people that were kind of darker going further and further and further to the back. I always
No,
found that
because those are the people who love to talk to me.
yeah,
Because there's something about when you are a light and when you carry a light and when you're okay with being the light that you are, you're going to attract that because ultimately that's what everybody wants.
yeah,
Not everybody knows how to get there. I have no idea why I just said that, but that was kind of interesting.
yeah, but that's very true.
Mhm.
It's how many times has a stranger come up to you and told you their life story? Happens to me every time I leave my house, and that's one of the biggest things with someone who is of the light, especially empaths. If you are empathic, you attract them like moths to the flame. I have to tell someone what happened to me when I was in third grade in 1962, and I'm sitting there going, okay. And a lot of the times I humor them and I will listen to them. But I have learned, the older I have gotten, I can get that energy spotted a lot quicker.
You're
And
much better than I am because I'm like, can we just cut to the chase of the story? I know where we're going.
sometimes they need to express it in order to heal. That's what I have found. And I would listen to bums when I was in San Francisco, a huge homeless population. I would walk down the street and they would each stop me. It was like I was on a tour, had to shake this one's hand and then listen to their story, and then the next one, and it would take me half an hour to get three doors down sometimes.
Mm.
And I did that because I could see the aura clearing. I could see all of a sudden it was gone, and that was one less issue that person had. And I just felt like it wasn't really hurting me, so I could do that. But I found out later, yeah, it kind of was.
I
Kind of
feel
was.
like I should amend my statement in that I mean, I have been a therapist for 30 years. I have certainly listened to people tell their full stories
Yeah.
without telling them to jump to the but, like, when I'm out and in my personal life, because I was a therapist for so long, it's like, "No, I'm not at work anymore. I really no more." Because I think sometimes, because you are a therapist and that's just your nature, people people sense that about you. It's not even just the empath thing, and then they just want to start talking to you and for you to listen and for you to be supportive, and it's just like, yeah, no.
Yeah. I've had people come up to me in the strangest places with the strangest things come out of their mouth. And it just said, I was in line at the post office one time. A guy walks in the door, and instead of getting in line, he cuts around, and I'm watching him go, oh no, we're gonna have an issue here. He comes up to me and goes, I used to be a pig farmer. I don't know why I had to tell you that, but I had to tell you I used to be a pig farmer. Have a good day. And he left the post office, completely. Like, what was that? What was that? And I still think about that. Like, what was that? He came in, maybe he dropped mail off, in the chute, and I just didn't see it. But he literally walked right to me, made his big announcement. and left. I've had people in the grocery store come up to me and tell me they just got their 30-day chip, or, for AA. And, I'm not in AA. I've never been in AA. Why is this important for you to tell me? But they do. And they still do every time I leave my house. I'm going to become a hermit. There's a nice cave I've scoped out up in the mountains.
Well, that's good. I don't think that's something that I could ever do, become a hermit.
I could totally become a hermit. Easy.
Although, I mean, if I had internet and I could Zoom and stuff, it wouldn't be that different than COVID. So I
True.
probably could do it now.
True.
Just interesting. Do any of our viewers have any questions for us? Those of you who are watching us live, we're happy to field a few questions. And yeah. So, it's just, I think the thing for me is sometimes like when I'm not feeling well or when I'm dealing with a lot, and then unexpected expectations from other people, I think can be really difficult. It's like because I'm modulating where I am, and then if I don't see it coming, and I think other people have experienced this, I think that it can be very overwhelming. It's like, where did that come from?
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Yeah. And, I've had those days where everything is very overwhelming and people just, it seems like the more tired I am when I'm out in public and the worse that I feel or the less sleep that I have gotten, the more people just,
you. Yeah.
it's like, what?
Yeah, I get that too. It's really funny to me.
Yeah.
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 Or sometimes I feel like I'm invisible, not literally. So here's a funny story about that. And I don't know why they're telling me to tell this story, but so I was volunteering for this conference called Celebrate Your Life, and I was at the airport to pick up a speaker. And so I was waiting, and the plane got delayed. So I went and sat down further away at the luggage where the seats are. And then John Kerry is walking by. Now, there's no one else in any of the other seats. I'm like sitting there by myself. He sits down one seat over from me and starts having this very personal conversation about some big meeting that's going on in Chicago, which is why he flew in. And I'm like, I'm sitting right here. It was the funny. I'm like, I don't think I'm supposed to be hearing any of this.
That's funny.
Yeah.
I know there have been times when I've had to go somewhere and I just don't want to deal with people. And it's the funniest thing because nobody will approach me. If I set that as I'm not going to have any interactions with anyone before I leave my house, it doesn't happen. I just always forget to do that.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard for me to leave my house.
So someone just wrote, I used to get anxious years ago when I'd go out, not about shopping, and one day it just stopped. I probably told myself to stop.
It's amazing you can do that. Truly can. Yep.
When you're in a large crowd, then add a heavier introduction. How do you contend?
I'm not sure what you mean by a heavier introduction. But I have had we were actually in a church one time. So it was a wedding, and someone at the reception made a beeline up to me and said, I used to date the bride and I hate her, so they're both gonna die soon. And I went, whoa, what? Wait a minute, what? What did you just say at this beautiful wedding? And that was I just took his arm and led him away from everybody. And people were like, "What did he say? What would My daughter's coming up, going, "What did he say?" I'm like, "Shh, let's." And I talked him down to the point where he left. But I found out later that he did harass them for like the next several months. They had to get a restraining order. But that was a weird thing that happened in the middle. We were in the middle of the reception. I mean, there were hundreds of people right around, and he was right in the center. It's that was strange. But I had someone tell me later that they could see the dark mist fly, behind him as he left. It just, you know,
When
but
you're in crowds, can you see when a situation is going to happen before it happens?
yep, yep.
That's sometimes unnerving to me.
It's unnerving. I had a previous life in the music industry. And there was a large show, and it was sort of an awards ceremony. And there was people that did not get along, and I could see. I didn't know any about their backstory. I
Mm.
just knew I was there, they were there, and I could see it as they both walked in. And I'm like looking back and forth, looking back and forth. And I've got security, and I said, I don't know that there's a problem, but I think these two people have a problem with each other. And he looked and he went, oh, yeah, they do. And he made a beeline. So he knew, I didn't even know who they were, found out later, but it was weird. It was weird. That's the worst one, I think. I just excuse myself and leave. Honestly, I do. I don't need that, you know.
Yeah,
Uh,
it's just, I mean, it's like when you start really thinking about stuff, it's really interesting, what starts to come to the surface and things like that. Because, I mean, these are things that most people don't talk about, but lots of people feel or lots of people have experiences with. And I think to tie it all back around, it's about self care. When you know you have these gifts and abilities, how do you manage it outside of the safety? You have a very strange look on your face.
I just, as literally the window in front of me, this ginormous purple orb just bounced. What was that?
So yeah, I just think, it just goes with self-care and about how do you manage your energy, no matter if you're by yourself or with friends or even with a big group of people.
The thing is, when you're getting those feelings,
Mm.
pay attention to them. You don't have to act on them, but you have to notice that you're getting them so that you can figure it out later. You don't want to leave that hanging, because what happens if energy is not taken care of is it will grow into something else. And you don't want that. You really don't want that. So when you notice you're getting those feelings and things are starting to happen around you and they're going, huh, what's going on? Take a time out, sit down with yourself, and really look at what you're feeling.
Mm.
Don't bury it. Don't ignore it. Don't try to talk yourself out of it. All of those things are only going to make it worse for you in the long run.
So anything else you want to talk about today before we kind of wrap up?
I don't think I have anything.
Well, we just want to thank all the viewers for their comments and questions and feedback during the podcast. Again, if you're watching later, please subscribe and like the channel. Give us a thumbs up. And if anything comes up, reach out to one of us in between, and we will get back to you. So, everybody, have a great night, and we will see you all again next week. Bye for now.
Bye.